I was just trying to enjoy a quiet morning at my lake cabin, coffee in hand, breeze off the water, when I got blindsided by an HOA president who thought running a neighborhood meant steamrolling people, literally, with bulldozers. I didn't move out here to start a war. But when they fenced off my walking path and started messing with things my dad and I built together, yeah, something in me snapped. Turns out, I own the only dock for miles. And that changed everything. Ever had to fight for something that should have just been yours? Drop a comment below. You're watching STORIESOFQA, and if you want to help keep these stories coming, that thanks button down there makes a real difference. I stared at the paper in my hands, half expecting to see a camera crew jump out and yell gotcha. No way anyone could be serious writing this kind of thing. The letter was printed on official HOA letterhead, complete with a fancy logo that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Dear Mr. Sterling, it began. And just like that, I knew this wasn't going to be good news. The Homeowners Association Board has determined that your continued use of the informal walking path to the lake area damages community aesthetics and does not align with our new development standards. I had to read that sentence 3 times before I could process what they were saying. My walking path damages community aesthetics? I bought peace, not permission slips. The letter went on to demand that I cease and desist using the path I'd walked daily for the past 2 years, ever since buying the cabin. 2 years. Not 2 weeks. Not 2 months. 2 full years of walking that same trail to the lake each morning with my coffee, each evening to watch the sunset, and every weekend when friends visited. It wasn't even fancy, just a worn dirt trail through the trees connecting my backyard to the shore. It didn't hurt anything. It didn't block anything. It wasn't even visible from most of the other houses. But apparently, Lorraine Beaumont, the newly elected HOA president, had decided it was an eyesore that needed to disappear. I figured I'd handle this like a reasonable adult and give them a call. Big mistake. The HOA office secretary, who sounded like she might have been 19 and definitely wasn't getting paid enough to deal with angry homeowners, told me that the board's decisions were final, and Mr. Sterling should have attended the community meeting if he wanted input. Community meeting? I never got any notice about a meeting. And trust me, I check my mail religiously. I'm paranoid about missing important stuff. I explained this to the secretary, and she replied, well, the notice was posted on the community bulletin board for the required 14 days. The bulletin board that's located next to the clubhouse, which is 3 miles from my cabin and nowhere near my daily routine. 3 days after that call, I woke up to the sound of construction vehicles in my backyard. Not near my backyard, in it. Right where my walking path started. They were putting up orange mesh fencing everywhere, along with big red signs that read construction zone, no entry. The workers looked about as confused as I felt when I walked outside in my pajamas and asked what was going on. Lady told us to fence off this area, one of them said, pointing toward a woman in a white blazer standing about 50 feet away, supervising everything. That was my first real look at Lorraine Beaumont. And she looked exactly like someone who would shut down a walking path for aesthetic reasons. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect posture. And absolutely no expression when she noticed me watching her. Her white blazer looked absurd in the muddy construction zone, like she'd dressed for a boardroom and walked into a swamp. I walked over and asked what was going on. She didn't even introduce herself, just launched into a scripted speech about community standards and protecting property values. This area is being prepared for landscaping improvements that will benefit the entire neighborhood, she said, avoiding eye contact. Residents will need to use alternative routes to access lake facilities. Alternative routes? The nearest public lake access is nearly a quarter-mile away, down a steep hill that turns into a mudslide every time it rains. I explained that I'd been using that trail for 2 years without issue. That's when she finally looked me in the eye. Previous usage does not establish legal rights, Mr. Sterling. I'm sure you understand. She said it like I was a child caught stealing cookies. And the way she kept glancing toward the lake, like she was measuring distances, planning something bigger, it felt like this wasn't just about my little trail. We're exploring several lakefront beautification initiatives that will transform this area, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, we need proper clearance and control over all access points to ensure the project's success. I had to stop and stare at her. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about clearing the way for whatever vanity project she had in mind. So there I was, standing in my own backyard, staring at orange fencing blocking off the lake I bought this property to enjoy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I left city life to escape control and bureaucracy, and now I was being boxed in by both, just with a lake view. That evening, when I had to take the long way around, boots sinking into the mud with every step, I kept thinking, this is exactly what I came here to get away from. Every step just dragged me deeper into the nonsense I thought I'd left behind. That night, I called Harold Finch, a retired law professor who lives about a mile down the road. He'd helped me with a few property questions when I first moved here. Harold was one of those guys who, Lorraine had hired an engineer to find issues with my dock, hoping it would give her the ammunition she needed to shut down my lake access for good. Instead, the report came back with professional documentation confirming that my dock was not only safe, it was legally. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd realized yet that her own safety inspection had just backfired in spectacular fashion. I got my answer that Thursday afternoon when I saw Lorraine's car parked in my driveway. She was standing beside it, holding a folder and staring at my dock with an expression I couldn't quite read. When she noticed me walking toward her, she didn't launch into one of her usual speeches about community standards or property values. She went quiet. Then she forced an awkward smile and actually stepped backward, like she thought I might attack her or something. I received a copy of the engineering report, she said, voice noticeably smaller. It appears your dock meets all applicable safety requirements. The dock had outlived her argument, and I watched the moment she realized it. As Lorraine walked away, her perfect posture finally faltering, I found myself wondering, did completely crushing someone's illusion of control make me the hero of this story, or just another villain with better lawyers? I'd won every battle so far, but something told me the war wasn't over, and maybe, just maybe, winning wouldn't feel quite as satisfying as I expected. I'd been thinking about the retired librarian's question for weeks. Was I fighting for the path, or for the self-respect they tried to take from me? The answer came into focus when I decided to organize a community meeting, not just to fix my situation, but to address what had clearly become a neighborhood-wide problem with HOA overreach. I called everyone who'd ever complained. Most of them showed up. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the local community center, and quietly, I invited a county newspaper reporter who'd been covering local government issues. 38 people showed up that night. Way more than I expected, and apparently, way more than Lorraine expected, too. She arrived right at 7 p.m. with 2 other board members, looking confident, ready to handle what she probably thought would be a handful of complainers she could dismiss. But when she walked into that room and saw the crowd, and the reporter taking notes in the back, her expression shifted fast, from confidence to concern. I wasn't aware this was going to be a media event, she said quietly to me, already calculating damage control strategies. The format was simple. Anyone who wanted to share their experience with the current HOA board got 5 minutes. Then we'd open the floor to discussion and solutions. I went first. I told the story of my walking path, the dock, the inspection, not with anger, but facts. I wanted people to see the pattern, not just my personal frustrations. The response from others was more powerful than I'd imagined, and more emotional than I was prepared for. An elderly man spoke next. His voice trembled as he described getting fined for non-compliant bushes that had grown in his yard for 15 years. "I'm not afraid of the HOA," he said, locking eyes with Lorraine. His wife added that they'd considered moving after 23 years, just to escape the constant fear of violation notices. A local business owner stood up next, furious over restrictions that banned her from advertising on her own property. "We moved here for peace and quiet," she said, "not to live like there are surveillance cameras on every mailbox." But it was the retired librarian who truly changed the energy in the room. She'd been quiet the whole night, but when she stood up, everyone leaned in. "When you make people afraid to plant flowers or hang decorations without permission," she said, looking straight at Lorraine, "you're not protecting a community, you're destroying it." And in that moment, Lorraine's face drained of color. When it was her turn to respond, Lorraine launched into a prepared speech, something about property values, aesthetic standards, long-term investment strategies. It was all corporate jargon. She spoke corporate, not human. She completely ignored the actual stories, the real pain that had just been laid bare in that room. Then someone in the back called out. I motioned for a vote of no confidence in the current HOA board. No one had planned it, but it moved fast. The idea caught fire instantly. Turns out, the mediator from my previous dispute was there, as a resident. She confirmed that under the HOA charter, we could hold a community vote on board leadership if procedures were followed. And so we did. The vote was unanimous. All 38 hands went up. Even 2 current board members raised their hands, apparently feeling safe enough to finally speak their truth. Lorraine stood there frozen, folder clenched tightly, eyes scanning the room like she was seeing her neighbors for the very first time. Then she turned and walked out. No speech, no threats, no exit line, just silence and defeat. The rest of us stayed and talked about where to go from there. The newly elected board approached me afterward, offering sincere apologies and a proposal I didn't see coming. They wanted to pay me a monthly rental fee to use my dock as the community's main lake access point. I nearly laughed. After all the fighting to keep the HOA away from my dock, now they wanted to rent it? No, I said to the new chairman. You can use it any time, as much as you want. But it stays mine. Forever. And we're putting that in writing. 3 months later, I'm sitting on that same dock, watching the sunset turn the lake into liquid gold, and everything feels different in the best possible way. Kids are jumping off the far end. Families are chatting and laughing on the shore. On weekends, people picnic on the old planks. Teenagers dive in on hot summer days. The dock belongs to me, but now it belongs to all of us. Nobody asks permission. Nobody pays fees. Nobody fills out forms. Just community, the way it should be. Where Lorraine's warning signs used to hang, kids now tie towels and toss down blankets. Lorraine moved out 6 weeks after the meeting. Word is she bought a condo in a gated community with even stricter rules than the ones she tried to impose here. Some people never learn what makes a neighborhood worth living in. Now, I get Christmas cards from neighbors I barely knew before. The elderly couple invited me to their anniversary party. The business owner's company is thriving. And the retired librarian? She just smiles and waves every morning as I walk down to the lake. I've never been someone who enjoys conflict or taking away someone's power. But this time, I had to stand my ground. Because if I'd let them take my lake access, what would have been next? My house color? My car? My friends? Sometimes you don't fight for what you want. You fight for what you refuse to lose. Try to control everything, and you end up with nothing. But share what you have, and that's when you truly win. The dock stayed mine. But now, it belongs to all of us. If this story hit home, give it a like, subscribe to Stories of QA, and drop a comment. And if you want to help support more stories like this one, that little thanks button down below really helps. See you next time. Stories of QA signing off, for now. But the drama? Oh, it never sleeps. Tap that bell if you're ready for round 2.